Hey all, Elise here from the Metaview team, and today I'm running you through how we use sequences. Sequences is your way to build email campaigns and outreach to engage candidates that you've found through our AI sourcing agent. So you can think of sequences as the second piece of AI sourcing. First, we jump into the sourcing agent, find our really strong candidates, and then we jump into sequences to think about how we can engage them and bring them into our pipelines. So let's run through exactly how it works. How do we find sequences? As always, we're clicking into the Metaview menu and then finding the Sequences tab on the menu panel. My Sequences dashboard is first going to show me all of my sequences that exist and then give me some data and statistics around how my sequences are performing over time. So at a very first glance, you can see that our approach to outreach is now a lot more strategic and data-driven to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward when it comes to engaging candidates into our processes. So we're going to run through how we can create a sequence to engage candidates into our sales pipeline. Here you can see a number of sequences that I've already created. But to get started, I'm going to create one from scratch by clicking New Sequence in the top right-hand corner. The process of building your sequence is kind of like building an email campaign. We have the ability to create a multi-step sequence looking at the timings that we want to send, who we want to send each sequence from, and then starting to actually build the content of our email campaigns. So as I start to build out my sequence for my account executive, the first thing I'm going to do is start to build that first email that's going to get sent out to candidates as part of this sequence. As I start to build my sequence, I can use rich text as well as AI prompts to really start to build out the body of this email. So with any outreach, I of course want to start by addressing the candidate. So I'm going to add in the candidate's first name and make this the first line. As I continue building out my email, I'm going to keep rich text here to keep these areas stagnant within my email. For all of my outreach, I want the first line to be the same. Hey, candidate name, Elise here from the Metaview team. So I'm going to keep this as open text so that way it stays the same with every email that I'm sending. The next piece, though, I want to make something really targeted to the candidate. And this is where I want to start to use AI to actually analyze the candidate's experience and their skills and incorporate that in some way relevant to my outreach. What I've done here is essentially built out an AI prompt within these curly brackets. So this means as I enroll candidates into this sequence, Metaview is going to look through every candidate's profile and actually start to build context in this email for me that is hyper-specific to the candidates that I'm enrolling into this outreach. Your prompts can be as short or as detailed as you would like, but as you can see, I've kept it pretty basic. I've asked Metaview to write me a short sentence highlighting one relevant piece of experience on this candidate's profile. I also want this to act as a hook to make this candidate want to engage with me about this role, but I want it to be short and brief, no longer than one sentence. For my call to action, I want that to be the same every time, so I'm going to now leave the AI prompting and switch back to rich text. So now here is my first email of my sequence. I'm having Metaview enrich the candidate's name based on the AI fields. My opening line, Elise here from the Metaview team, is going to be the same every time. I'm going to start to bring in AI prompting to pull in some relevant areas of these candidates' experience. And then my call to action remains consistent. We're scaling our go-to-market team and looking for top performers to help us grow, interested in exploring. As I'm building with AI, I can always switch across to the preview tab to get a short snippet into how this email is actually going to look in practice. So as you can see, this is super powerful now of building a really strong outreach that is tailored to every single candidate's profile and experience, really maximizing on AI prompting to make sure that your outreach is high impact and high efficiency. So now that I've built my first email, what I want to do is actually start to build an email sequence. So I've got this email to send immediately, so as soon as I bring someone into the sequence, they're going to get this first email from me. But what I'm actually going to do is add a second step. In the event that this candidate doesn't engage or respond, I want to send another email 3 days later to bump this email back to the top of their inbox and try and get their attention again. So to do that, I'm going to add a new step, add a second email, and start to build out my follow-up email. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the send time because I want this email to be sent after 3 days of the first one. So updating this, now if a candidate doesn't respond or engage with my first email, they're going to get a follow-up after 3 days' time. I also want this email to get sent as a reply to the thread. If we wanted to send it as a new thread, we could create a brand new email thread as well. But in my instance, I want it to bump up in that same thread to the candidate. And then finally, I'm now going to start to build that body in the same way that we did initially. So now I've built out my follow-up email, adding in a little bit of extra flavor around our commission structure, but keeping it pretty short and sweet to bump this back to the top of the candidate's inbox. So I've added one final step to my sequence now. This is getting sent after 4 days of the previous email. It's one final bump before the candidate gets removed from the sequence. You can see I'm still using these AI prompts to add in one line that makes it super relevant to this candidate, and then really nicely closing out this sequence if the candidate isn't interested. So now before I finalize my sequence, I can head across to the preview mode to have a quick look over what this sequence will look like. So to recap, as I enroll candidates to this sequence, they're going to receive this email as an immediate first step. If a candidate doesn't reply or engage with that first email, they'll then get this second email as a follow-up after 3 days. And then as a final closeout, 4 days after the previous email, they're getting this final nudge as my last call to action before I exit them from this sequence. So as you can see, it is as easy as that. Now that I'm happy with my sequence, I'm going to come across Save the Sequence and actually start to enroll candidates within this sequence. I'm now going to head across to the Candidates tab to start to enroll candidates into this sequence. As we start to bring candidates into this sequence, this directly comes from your AI sourcing shortlist. So as I come down to add candidates, I'm now going to see all of my searches that I've run within AI sourcing. And for any search that I have some candidates marked as yes, so that's any candidates that I've left yes feedback to, I can highlight that search, review the candidates that I have shortlisted, and then enroll them into my sequence. So now that I've brought candidates, let's chat through how we can now manage these response rates and manage interest directly in Metaview. So here I can see a breakdown of all the candidates that I've enrolled into this sequence. I have a bit of context on each candidate, and as I scroll across to the right, I can see each step within my sequence and where most of my candidates are falling in or falling out of the sequence themselves. I can click in and start to see the trend of the conversation, and I can also see the outcome as to whether the candidate is interested or not interested. Metaview will automatically tag these based on the tone of the email thread. So if a candidate's replied saying, yeah, let's chat, Metaview will be able to pick that up and mark this candidate as interested. This, of course, can be changed though manually. So if the candidate changes their mind over time, I can click in here and then change the outcome. The huge benefit here is we can now start to think of outreach really strategically. So I can start to see across all of the candidates that I've enrolled into this sequence, which step is most successful and where am I having the most traction. So let's say here you're finding at step 2 is where you're getting most replies from candidates. What I can then do is start to look at what is it about step 2 that's really pulling candidates in here, and how can I start to move that up in the pipeline to use that as my first outreach to the candidates. So we're really starting to move away from this world of bulk outreach and just hope something sticks into how can we be a lot more data-driven in the way we communicate with and really start to tap into engagement across our pipelines. So that is our full end-to-end process of building sequences within Metaview. Let's now run through some other really cool things that we can do when we're creating our email sequences. Now I'm going to head to another sequence that I've built for our product engineer roles at Metaview. I've built this sequence out a little bit differently because in this sequence, I actually want to get Metaview to draft the entire email for me. So what I've done here, rather than incorporating both rich text and prompting, I've actually come through and written my whole body of my email within Metaview prompts. So you really have full flexibility on how you want to use AI to start to build out your content for your outreach. But here I've given Metaview a pretty lengthy prompt to say exactly what I want to see from this email. I've given Metaview the goal of what this email is about and what I want to achieve. I've given Metaview some formatting instructions on how I want this email written and formatted. And then I've also come in and added some tone guidelines to tell Metaview the tone that this email should be written in. So this is super powerful and really just shows you that level of flexibility you can have when building out your sequences in Metaview. As I preview the email, let's take a quick look at what the output actually looks like. So you can see that the tone is really on point with how I like to speak. It's short, it's punchy, and it's really relevant to this candidate to pull in and make them engaged in my process. The other piece that makes this outreach really unique is I'm sending this email on behalf of the hiring manager. What I learned through the data Metaview was showing me is that candidates were engaging more when they were hearing directly from the hiring manager rather than from myself as the recruiter. So I'm starting to incorporate those findings directly in my outreach. What Metaview allows me to do is, in addition to sending emails directly from myself, I can actually send communications from anyone else within my team that grants me permission. So for this outreach, I'm actually sending on behalf of the hiring manager here. So to do that, my hiring manager has given me permission to send an email on their behalf. And now as I click the From tab, I can actually switch down to send on behalf of my hiring manager. What I could also do is add myself as a CC or even a BCC if I wanted to. But again, giving you a heap of flexibility when it comes to how you want to start to strategically engage candidates within your pipelines. So there you have it. There's a couple of different ways that you can start to leverage Metaview's new sequences feature. We're super excited about this and are continuing to evolve the tool. But in the meantime, jump in, start building out your email sequences, and see the power for yourself.